and welcome to the Omen Path podcast. First time, Dom, what do you think of the sounds of that?
Yeah, it sounds good. It's a little bit less of a mouthful than the previous name.
Oh, God, isn't it just? If you are new to the pod, we have just changed our name from the yet-to-be-named Magic the Gathering podcast, which, as you can hear, is quite a mouthful. So the Omen Path podcast sounds a lot nicer and it's a lot easier to say. So, yeah, I'm really enjoying the name, and we've just been putting some stuff out on socials, and it's definitely been... Well, it feels like it's been getting a bit of traction, which is all good. So, yeah. Anyway, we have got the amazing Emma Partlow here today with us as our first guest of the new named podcast. How are you doing, Emma?
I'm doing good. How are you doing? Love the name, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
We are thoroughly enjoying it. It's there's a bit of a backstory to it, which is it's taken us forever, literally forever, to finally come up to one. But we finally got there in the end. That's the important thing. Yeah, how you guys been? How's your Magic weeks been recently? Obviously, we've just had recent ban announcements, and we were talking about it in our last cuts. Yeah, yeah.
My week's been pretty good. Talking outside of work when I talk about Magic in this context. So I played some Pauper. I'm trying to grow a Pauper scene in Preston, where I live. My local game store is Harlequins. They're very good for like singles and stuff, but they tend to be more of a commander crowd, which is fairly common at LGS these days.
Yeah. So
trying to convert commander players into playing constructor formats is very challenging. But if you're advertising, hey, here's a £30 deck, doesn't really change. Let's play some Pauper. So last weekend we had 22 people for a Pauper monthly event, and this was like the first ones, and that was pretty good. I did terrible, but I had a load of fun, and it was really cool just to see people get into the format.
That's the important thing. I mean, are you finding when you're dragging commander players kicking and screaming, are you find they play and they go, actually, I kind of enjoy this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not dragging them because that implies I'm making them do something against their will, which I will never do.
Of course.
But when, there's that, trope of you have one person that has 10 Pauper decks, has like a toolbox of Pauper decks or a toolbox of commander decks.
Yeah.
I am the person with a toolbox of Pauper decks. So I had like 6 decks to lend out to people, and it's like all you have to do is pay for entry, which wasn't a lot anyway, and just like get a feel for the format, and if you don't like it, you can just go back to whatever you want to do. And some people enjoyed it. Some people are looking at decks. Some people are like, wow, Mold Drifter is like a really good card in this format. I love Mold Drifter. And, they get to do all the stuff with Ephemerate. And one thing people don't realize is how powerful Pauper is, because you have stuff like Lightning Bolt, you have Brainstorm, you have Ponder, you have Dark Ritual. These historically powerful cards do exist in the format. And people are just like, how is this legal? And it's like, oh, you'll find out when, play Pauper and stuff.
Oh, yeah. I think that's the one thing I found with it when I haven't played a massive amount of it, but I am a big fan of it. And I don't want to cause any upset, and I hope I don't by saying what I'm about to say, Emma, but I always think of Pauper as watching really old professional Magic. So if you ever watch any old professional footage, it is high-powered, it's quick, it's just beautiful, it's amazing to watch. And playing Pauper feels just like that. I really like it, actually. I think it's fantastic.
There has been comparisons to say Pauper is like Legacy Light.
Okay.
Is a good way to put it. It has that Legacy style gameplay, but not the price tag, because it's not dealing with reserve list cards or anything like that. It's just a little snapshot of like how powerful Magic can be, and it breaks that that mindset of rares and mythics are the most powerful cards, and it's not necessarily true, because you have this really interactive, engaging format just with a pile of commons. You can make a deck from your leftover play booster cards. Like, not many formats can do that, I don't think.
I think there's the consistency as well, especially if you're coming from Commander, where you can have like 4 ofs, right? So actually your deck plays a lot better. It's not just 1 in 100. There's a good chance you're going to see those cards that you enjoy seeing, be able to use them effectively.
I mean, 4 of Brainstorms is pretty good, isn't it? 4 of Lightning Bolts.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Like, Modern Horizons 3 just came out, and sure, so for context, I'm on the Pauper format panel. I'm one of 7 people that runs and curates the Pauper format. Like even Modern Horizons 3, sure, we had to ban Craniorama ahead of schedule, but there's been like a breakout deck out of that with Brood Scale combo, which is like this like mid-rangey. It's kind of like the splinter twin of Pauper in the sense that you have this mid-range pan and then have a combo finish at the end. Because Basking Brood Scale is really good with Sadistically, which is this really old card, I believe, from like Tempest. And where you can make loads of counters and stuff like that. So people are always innovating in the format, and it's really great to see. And people are enjoying it.
I love that. I love it's always really nice when you hear of a format, whether it be modern or maybe legacy or even Pauper. You hear of these old cards, they find their way back into the meta, and I love that. For me personally. Look, let's go right back to the beginning, Emma. Let's talk about how you got into Magic and where you started, and I think that's probably going to be the best place to start.
Okay, so my origin story, it started about 10 years ago, next month,
10
funnily
years.
enough. Nearly 10 years in Magic, which it doesn't feel like 10 years in a really good way. So I started at the tail end of Magic 2015. I was hanging out with I was at Games Workshop in Ipswich, hanging out with my Warhammer friends, just messing around, and a lot of them were getting into Magic. And I'm like, what is this nerdy card game? Why are we playing this? We could be playing Warhammer or whatever. Didn't really give it much attention at the time, but the more they started playing, the more I got into it. So I didn't play anything like Commander at this point, because Commander was just starting to become popular around 2014. Mm-hmm. So we just built like kitchen table decks, which is like the classic way to learn Magic, right? And I found it really interesting. So I was just like, cool, once, I split a box of M15 with a friend just to like get a collection going. My first rare / mythic rare is Jace the Living Guild Pact. That card is not very good. I was like, cool, a Planeswalker. And I'm like, what does it do? And my friend was like, not much. I'm like, great. I'm going to trade it for a Najani, which seemed way better at the time. And yeah, like since then, I went to my first pre-release, which was Khans of Tarkir.
Nice.
I played, because back then pre-release kits were seeded. And what I mean by seeded, as in you could pick one of the 5 Khans to play. Like in Ravnica, you could pick one of the 10 Ravnica guilds and you would get a pack around Gruul cards. You get one around Azorius cards. So I picked Mardu because that's the one that kind of looked pretty cool to me. And then, like bumbling around trying to play this pre-release at Extreme Trades in Colchester. This is how long ago, because they were still going. And I just remember having a couple of ponyback brigades morphed, and I remember flipping them, making a load of goblins. I'm like, yeah, this is sick. I want to keep doing this for as long as possible. And 10 years later, here I am.
Nice. I always feel like I love hearing people's origin stories and how they got into Magic, because a lot of the times it's exactly the same. It's just a different variation of the same story, and I think that's the beautiful thing that brings the community together, because we're all in the same boat in the same position at the end of the day, aren't we?
And this was back during a time that Magic was a lot more simpler. You didn't have play boosters, you didn't have these showcase treatments, you didn't have 25 Commander Precons coming a year. You just had one set, one booster range, maybe an annual Commander Precon release, and that was it. So it really gave you the time to like properly get into it and just probably like enjoy the sets. And this was around when blocks existed, which is something that doesn't really exist anymore. But yeah, it feels like a different timeline, just given how the cadence of things are going now in Magic in the last 5-6 years.
Technically, it was a different timeline because Sarkhan was messing around and all that stuff.
Yeah, the Dragons of Tarkir was different. Okay.
I've got PTSD from the whole of Khan's block, because every pre-release I went to, I ended up with 0 dragons and all my opponents just had loads.
Oh,
and,
no.
I just got nibbled by dragons the whole block. But yeah, it was fun. I opened quite a few polluted deltas at that time.
Yes. People were very excited for the fetch lands. I remember when Fate Reforged came around, which was like the second set in the Khans block. Soulfire Grandmaster was like super hyped, because it's like, my spells have lifelink. This is great. I can like, gain life of burning people. And yeah, it was just a cool set. It was just a cool environment. It was a very popular limited format. and it was very well done. And I feel very lucky to fall into a set that had a good limited format, because I've heard stories of people getting in like Core Set and Dark Ascension and Innistrad, and those were a little mopier compared to Khan. So I feel quite fortunate.
Yeah, I think. Well, although we're not having core sets now, we are effectively having the foundation sets. That's kind of it's kind of a rebranding of it, really. But yeah, I've always felt like that. Like, they're great sets to have. They are exactly what they need to be, but they were never the very best to.
I actually liked Core Set Limited once I got, a bit more involved in Magic. It just felt very bread and butter limited to me. It didn't do anything fancy. It had loads of flavor text on cards. You played your mopey free vanillas and you were happy with it. And it wasn't synergy, but it just taught you like the literal foundations of limited without being too complicated.
I think my biggest issue, and I've said this in the pod many a time, my first release was Throne of Eldraine. So that level was up here. So then when we started to have like Ikoria and then the core sets afterwards and Pharos, they all felt significantly underpowered. So, my first sort of proper rotation of standard was Throne of Eldraine standard. So that was, high powered. Yeah, these were the times when multiple cards were getting banned left, right, and centre. Months or even close to weeks from release because of their power level and how bad they were.
Dawn of Fire design.
Yes,
exactly. But it's I always like hearing those sort of type of stories. But Kanzatake always sounds. I like that set. I've opened a few packs. Set. Yeah, I really like it. It's one of those ones that.
Don't know if you can see behind me right now. There is a box of Kanzatake sealed.
Oh, I do see it.
I plan to crack that open at some point, because it was like I bought it like a couple of years after it was released. I'm like, I'm gonna keep this for a rainy day. I'm gonna draft it with friends, and I'm probably gonna crack it soon because it's coming up 10 years.
Nice.
But also, it's like I've been in Magic for as long as Siege Rhino. That's a great statistics. Siege Rhino is awesome.
I think that's the good thing about everybody has nostalgic sets, and you speak to anyone in Magic, and they'll always tell you about what theirs is. And it's normally the first one you went to or the first one you got properly involved in, and. They make great stories. I always think they make great stories, and we can all reminisce over, those sets.
Back in my day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it is. Although when I say back in my day, which is nowhere near as long ago as both of you two.
Back in my day, we had Oko.
Yeah, exactly.
Questing beast.
The worst thing about it is it probably would have been. Oh God. Obviously I've said this on the pod before, I very, very nearly got into Magic the Gathering when I was a teenager.
Sure.
I was playing Pokemon CCG at the time and going down Suffolk Sci-Fi. Whoop, whoop.
Oh, I remember Suffolk Sci-Fi.
Yeah.
That is a long time ago.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and I can remember I used to go down there with a friend of mine, and we'd go, we'd trade Pokemon and buy Pokemon packs. That's where we used to get our stuff from. And I can always remember there was always Magic the Gathering. And I can remember asking, the owner's name has just gone from my head, but I can always remember asking him about, what is this? And he said, it's Magic the Gathering. And we very nearly bought some packs, and I think that would have then got us going. But at the same time, my friend I used to go with, he wasn't that sold on it. And actually what he was more interested in was a Star Trek trading card game. So we ended up buying a little bit of that, and that sort of dragged me away until later on. Yeah. But I would have loved to have got involved at that sort of time. But even I, as a lot more newer player and come into it, I still look at these older sets, and because I feel like I'm catching up. So I feel this nostalgic view, particularly with the artwork and the styles. The power is a bit of a funny one because, as we all know, older cards are either horrific or so broken they're probably restricted, banned, or the only really playable places you got them is in Commander now. So, but I mean, I love hearing a good origin story. So, what about your day-to-day then, Emma? What do you do for a job? Obviously, we know you work within the Magic community and you work with working. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
So my day-to-day job, my 9 to 5 is, so I am the editor for TCG Player. I run the Magic the Gathering side of things. So any content that you see on TCG Player, it's probably gone through me. It's been edited. You know, I manage that side of TCG Player. I also write when time permits. I enjoy writing quite a bit. So usually I'm editing, managing, planning, writing, you know, keeping the content mill going just to make sure everything's in place, you know, get playbooks set up because, you know, the cadence of releases are quite a lot these days. And given how big TCG Player is as a company in the US, as a marketplace, you know, I have to be pretty on top of things just because, you know, I get a lot of questions asked internally from people who aren't necessarily well versed with Magic. So it's like I need to come prepared as well as, you know, delivering on all this content stuff. It's really exciting. It can be a little stressful at times just because, you know, releases can be quite big or, you know, there's just a lot coming at once, but it's really rewarding. So
nice. So what spurred you down that direction then? Is it something that you thought, oh, I want to work within the Magic Gathering sphere, or did, like a lot of people and maybe a lot of us, we fell into it almost?
Yeah, it kind of was like a happy accident of sorts. So I started writing about 6 years ago, and when I mean started writing, it was like super loose, as it always is. So basically at this time, I was playing Magic competitively. I've been wanting to, so this is going to sound a little bit old. I was playing in PPTQs, which were basically qualifier events that you played to get on so it's basically the equivalent of the RCQs now.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's just an older name for it. So you were playing a PPTQ. If you won that, you played another event. If you won that, you got a Pro Tour invite.
Cool.
And these PPTQs were at store level. They happened all over the place. And I started playing in them. Around this time, like 2016, 2018, I got into Modern. That was like my first proper constructor format that I enjoyed. I'm a big Tron gamer, so I just played Tron pretty much exclusively. And as part of me practicing and learning and, you know, just getting reps in competitively, I started writing.
Okay.
Basically, I just wanted to write tournament reports after the end of like FNMs and events. Not necessarily to share it with people, but I'm somebody that learns quite a lot through process. So if I write something down, you know, that's a good way of me learning. Like I talk about, you know, say like I was playing against, you know, like Scape Shift. How did that go? Did I side these cards incorrectly? And just do like a post-mortem almost, but just write that down. It's how I learn and it's how I improve. So I started writing this stuff out and I was like, do I just put this on a blog? See what happens. Like someone's going to get value out of this regardless because, you know, there might be an Eldrazi Tron player that's just curious about thoughts. And, you know, I made like a Tumblr blog. This is how long ago we're talking here. I made a Tumblr blog, just wrote some stuff. Very loose, very, you know, rushed because, you know, I'm not a trained writer. I'm self-taught. And, you know, I posted it on Twitter with a small following at the time and just, you know, put it in like the Tron Facebook group. It's like, hey, I've just started learning. Here's some stuff if people want to read it. You know, it's nothing to lose kind of scenario. And I remember going to a Grand Prix. I believe it was Grand Prix Liverpool about like that year or the year after I put this
That's
up.
where I got my first giant card.
And I remember you had these like I think it was like 3-round, 4-round modern events that you just played to get prize tickets. What would usually happen is you would win the first 2 rounds and then you would ID the third just to get more tickets. And then they're like these just like modern events that just constantly fire so you can get tickets. And I remember playing against the opponent and he was like, you're the one that wrote about Eldrazi Tron, didn't you? And I was like, yeah. Like, and it's like, that's really good stuff. You should do more of it. And I was like, okay, cool. Let's see where this goes. I was just like, I was really surprised. You know, I didn't really put any effort into it. It was just like a switch for me to make it public. Like I could have kept that private, and just use it for my own needs. So, and then since then, I just kind of fell into it. I wrote for a couple of websites here and there, and it was, good Lord, it was about 4.5 years ago. I got an email from TCG Player saying we'd love to write a column, on like budget Magic, getting people into Modern. That is this historically expensive format, and I was like, yeah, sure. And then the rest is history.
Nice. That's a really nice way of. It's a nice way of starting what then led to become.
Yeah. I did not plan to become an editor or anything like that. It just happened. It's just, sure, I got lucky, but you also have to create your own luck.
Of course.
It just doesn't come to you.
So what about, how do you feel about working within effectively what is your hobby as well?
Difficult at times.
Yeah.
I am somebody that values contrast quite highly. So if my day-to-day is Magic and I finish my day and I don't feel like playing Magic because I've stared at pieces of cardboard all day just from working, I will do something else. As you can see, there's a paint station right next to me, so I paint Warhammer. That's a great way to relax and just decompress. I play video games. I'm knee-deep in Baldur's Gate 3 at the moment, which is a nice time sink. I like to bake. I like to go hiking and stuff like that. Sometimes I do feel like playing Magic, but there are days where I'm just like, I don't want to see a Magic card for a while. I'll come back to you tomorrow, and that's the rest of it. It is difficult, but the way I see it is, if you have a job, you need to have a hobby to escape your job.
Sure.
And now I need to find a new hobby to escape this job, which was once a hobby, but now is my job. So yeah, it is a difficult balance. There are some sacrifices, but I wouldn't change it for the world, because I get to work on a game or work part of a game that I've been playing for the last 10 years.
What are you painting at the moment, Warhammer-wise?
So I'm going to paint some Tyranids, but I'm kit bashing them to look like Eldrazi from Ulamog's Brood.
Oh, cool. Nice.
Yeah. I'm a big kit bash converter nerd, so I'm just messing around with green stuff at the minute, and I'm just going to paint them in Ulamog's Brood from, the purples and the pinks and the whites.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's a cool crossover. I was going to make some Zendikar Hedrons as the bases as well.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that's really
I look forward to seeing those.
Yeah, it's going to take forever, but it's just nice to forget about that, just to do something else. And I always find painting quite relaxing, because you see progress, and then there's this finished thing that's really satisfying. It's like building Lego. You have this really complicated, Lego set, and it always feels really rewarding once you finish it.
Yeah, the Dungeons and Dragons minifigures are out tomorrow, so I'm going to be going and getting some of those.
I really want the D&D Lego set, but apparently the actual campaign thing they did for it sucks. But the actual model is good.
You can download that separately, so it's a free PDF, the actual campaign, isn't it?
Yeah, I believe I think it was someone on Loading Ready Run, as part of their subathon, did that campaign, but they had to rewrite a bunch of it just because it didn't flow well. But it's just like the model looks so cool, because you get this big Lego dragon and all these characters and stuff. It looks so cool.
It does look cool. I was literally looking at it on the website earlier while I was browsing for Lego, as I often do. But it's interesting to have these crossovers. Obviously, we've got the D&D Magic cards as well. Yeah. Is there any Universe Beyond that you would want to see in Magic that I haven't done already?
So Simpsons is number one. I would love a Simpsons Secret Lair. I'm a big Simpsons fan. I've been a fan since pretty much the start. I wouldn't mind one on Mass Effect as well, like the BioWare games.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Dragon Age and Mass Effect. I think you could have some cool crossover there. And honestly, I just want more Warhammer cards. Those were sick.
Yeah.
Give me more of that, please. That was awesome.
When the Orc Secret Lair wasn't a deck, I was just super sad about that. There's a lot of stuff they can do.
Yeah.
I think
fingers crossed.
We've gushed over the Warhammer Universes Beyond many a time on this pod. I think that and Lord of the Rings is a great example about what they can do with it, and particularly the Warhammer decks. The art was
very well done.
The artwork was incredible. The cards were fantastic. the crossover in abilities, you know, how they've sort of done it was really, really good. But also the flavor text is fantastic. Like, so good.
There were some cool designs, but I just want more of it. I think the biggest shame about that release, it was the first one Wizards ever did proper, and I kind of wish it was like later down the pipeline. Like it was like you know, we've seen Doctor Who, and that's also done really well. I just wish the Warhammer ones kind of came later, after them baking and like revising the structure a little, because we would have got more that way.
I think maybe we've got a full set and some decks alongside it.
Like collector boosters of that would have been awesome.
Yeah. I think a full set of that would have been. I think you've both just said it was right. That would have fleshed it out a little bit more, and then we could have had, you know, your other sort of bits and bobs. You know, definitely. I mean, for me personally, I thought not having the orcs was a swing and a miss. But then again, like, I did play Warhammer when I was a kid, and you know, we didn't have a lot of the factions that are now out there and being pushed and that sort of stuff. So for me, Warhammer is Space Marines, Eldar, Orcs, primarily, and Imperial Guard. Like, that's the type of ilk where you're looking at. Chaos Marines. You know, that was Warhammer to me when I was a kid. It's come on a long way now. I am trying to get back into it, actually. Probably like most people, I started doing a bit of painting during COVID, and exactly what you just sort of said actually earlier, Emma, is it's actually really rewarding, and I found it incredibly relaxing. My biggest issue is probably like everyone, finding the time to do it.
I find it very cathartic. Drinking paint water aside, it is very, very cathartic.
I never managed to do that one.
It's just finding the time.
I never managed to do that one, but there was many times I went to and was like, nope. So what I started to do, actually, I started to put my paint water like too far to the right, because I always I generally drink with my right hand, and my glass is normally in front of me, so I'd have to go and around something as well to stop that, because
nice.
I can remember many a time, many a story people telling me about that sort of stuff.
It's not as delicious.
Does not taste right. Why does my coffee taste like iron?
Certain colours of paint are just horrific compared to others.
Right.
As well.
I saw.
I've tasted so many that I know that is sad, but there we go. So I never learned the lesson like Alex did, obviously.
I actually, weirdly enough, I saw a random advert for T-shirts earlier, and one of them was it was the old school paint. I can't remember the colour now. It was like Chaos Black or something like that. But it was just. Do you remember the sticker they just used to have on the side? It was with a
little red sun.
That's it. Yeah, it was just that, and so it was like a black T-shirt, the sticker with I think it was Chaos Black, and I was like, that is so cool. I really like that. Oh, nostalgia. It's a beautiful thing. So, anyone that knows anything about you, Emma, knows that you are obviously massive into Pauper.
Yes.
What first got you into Pauper? Let's start at how that all began.
Oh, now we're going back. So around the time I was really getting into Modern, going to these PPTQs, writing these very, very rough and probably not great looking tournament reports. I would not want to read them now. I also got into Pauper a little bit because Ivory Go Games, which is now Langdon Games, which is the store you both go to, had a pretty good Pauper scene. And there was a couple of people that played Pauper. I'm like, cool, what's this format? And it's just like, it's just format full of commons, and you just jam. And I'm like, sounds sick, I'm in. And then you've got stuff like Lightning Bolt, you got like Dark Ritual, you got these classically iconic cards in the format that were common, and you're like, how the heck was Lightning Bolt a common? Like, that would not get through in today's age, right? And then since then, I just kind of fell in love with it, because you can spend £25-30 and have a deck that is eternal. There's no rotation here, and you can just jam it whenever. And I just think that's a really cool thing, is the accessibility and the affordability of it. We often talk a lot about how Modern is really expensive. Like, one of the best decks in Modern right now is like $1,200. Pioneer's like $300, $400. Standard's seeing the same. Yeah. But what if you just play a format? Well, you could build like 10 Pauper decks for the same price. Like, it's just crazy, right?
I also quite like that. Well, no, I mean, you've hit it nail on the head. It is just so accessible, and actually, I mean, it's like I sort of said earlier. To me, it's like watching / playing old Pro Tour level stuff. It's fantastic, and because it is that accessible as well. The issue I sometimes have, I don't play a lot of competitive or sort of like 60 card staples or anything like that, but what I do tend to find is you'll play it for a period of time and then that old commander brain of mine kicks in. I fancy playing something a bit different, but you're then having to invest, like you said, you know, $300 or $1,200 if it's a modern or something like that. Whereas actually Pauper is a fantastic way because you could quite easily pick up another deck, you know, and almost like a meta or a high standard deck as well, you know, very quick, very easily.
Yeah. Something that you often see, you always have someone that's like the Pauper person who has like 8 Pauper decks, and you know they will fire off a Pauper weekly because they own all the decks and people can play. I think that's another good thing about the format. There's just so you can just lend out decks to people. Yeah. Like I said earlier, you know, we had a Pauper weekly not too long ago. I lent out like 5 decks and 22 people turned up. So it's really easy just to like leave 2 Pauper decks in your bag and go, do you want to jam?
Yeah.
And
it's also, a lot less upsetting if someone spills their drink all over your Pauper deck than your modern deck.
Sure, it is, yeah. There are some expensive Pauper staples, but yeah, generally it's people are a lot more forgiving because people assume, unfortunately, that value dictates power. So if a card's really expensive, it must be really good. It is true in some cases, like the One Ring is a very powerful card. It's also very expensive, but look at Lightning Bolt, it's like £1.50, and it's, you know, it's probably one of the best red spells ever.
They wouldn't even print it in the
no, they wouldn't even print it now.
Right?
Like it shouldn't have existed, to be honest. But you just like people just assume like expensive cards mean they're really powerful, and it's like no, it's how you play with these cards. You can play with a pile of commons and do really well. That's what's so good about limited. You can just literally win drafts and sealed events with commons and uncommons. And given like the power level, like the base power level of Magic sets these days, those commons tend to be pretty good. We've seen it with Baskin Brewscale from Modern Horizons 3. That is now its own Pauper deck. And it's like this Golgari, Jund, or Abzan like mid-range deck, and it just has this Baskin Brewscale statistically combo at the end, and it just gets people.
So I've got a question. It's just popped into my head, so it might not be quite constructed how I quite need it to do, but I have always found Pauper that when new sets are introduced, the format, apart from the odd cards, I know we were talking, you know, about sort of cards that were pre-released in Modern Horizons 3 that had to be sort of banned before released effectively, but maybe push that one to one side, so give a little bit of artistic license here. But I love that it seems like new sets shake the format up, not break the format. Whereas we are unfortunately seeing that, like, Modern is a great example about this because it just seems to be, you know, a Modern set comes out, and it doesn't just break it.
It's a rotational set every time, right? It's effectively.
Yeah. I mean, I can remember learning about this because I can remember the first person that was sort of telling me, "Oh, did it rotate?" So I was like, "But Modern doesn't." It's like, well, technically no, but, and then explained it to me, and it weren't until probably Modern Horizons 2 is where I really kind of was my first taste of it, and I was like, oh, I kind of understand this. Obviously, like the Elementals was a good example about that as well, but I've always thought that with Pauper. But do you feel like because of the power level of a common and uncommon, and I know it has raised over the years, and maybe the price to a certain degree as well, do you think that stops like the really wild cards from breaking the format, or a few wild cards that will break decks that then make something so dominant?
So the really interesting thing about Pauper is most of Pauper play comparatively happens on Magic Online, and the economy on Magic Online is actually pretty cheap for Pauper. I believe there's like a couple of cards that are expensive, but these are like a few tickets here and there. It's not like 500 tickets for a deck. It's more like 30. And when the economy is so good at Magic Online, people will just buy a deck and just keep playing it. Yeah. One thing that's really cool about Pauper, because of that, you have Archetype Masters, which is something that you used to get in like Modern pre-Horizons. You would have, oh, this is the Merfolk guy, this is the Tron person, this person just exclusively plays 5-color humans. You know, I'm gonna follow them. They're crushing an event with Grixis Death Shadow. They are the Death Shadow person, and you get that in Pauper on occasion as well. But when it comes to tabletop, it's a little different just because there is no competitive incentive to run Pauper events because it's not part of the RCQ system. Wizards aren't going to support it competitively, which makes total sense on their part because it doesn't make them money. You're not going to make money off a pile of commons. So when tabletop events do happen, they have to be community driven and run by TOs. And if they're marketed well, people will travel for them. We saw it with Paupergeddon in June, which saw about 650 players playing in just a Pauper event. Like first place got like 4k euros. Like there was no like PT invite on the line, there was no RCQ invites on the line or anything like that. People just wanted to play Pauper. Pricing is a little bit of a moot conversation because not everyone plays in paper, but they rather play online because they will get the games. Daybreak Games, who run Magic Online, run like challenges, which are these like good like events with pricing. So yeah, we would like to print so. Being on the Pauper format panel, we always try and see if we can get stuff reprinted that are expensive in Pauper on tabletop. Like Relic of Progenitus is a really good one. That was like reprinted a while ago, and now it's gone back up. Snuff Out is another really good one that was in Doctor Who. That has also just gone back up in price. And Gavin Verhey has said in the past he will try and weave these commons, these commons that are going up in price into sets, but it doesn't always work out. Which is why you haven't seen Dust to Dust yet, because that card just does not read well in like a limited format, even though it's like £7-8 right now.
Okay, go on.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because you've got these commons that, because they're printed so long ago, they are really, really powerful. So obviously, if they see print today, they'd be a rare or a mythic, etc. But obviously, you can still use them in the format.
Like downshifting is a really interesting part of Pauper, and that's what makes the format so exciting. Because sure, commons are printed in every set, but if there's like a master style set, downshifts can really change the texture of Pauper. Happened with Commander Masters. We had Monasteries of Spear and all that glitters, which we had to inevitably ban because they were just a little too good for Pauper. But they happen all the time, and this is usually in accommodation for the limited format, rather than thinking about Pauper, independently. If it happens, it happens. And if it's too powerful, there's a panel that can address that.
I think that's nicely sort of gets us into talking about the Pauper panel then. So tell us a little bit. First of all, tell us about how you got into it, and then talk about what it is, what it does, and what you're hoping for the future. Give us sort of a real sort of full spectrum about it.
Okay, so I believe it was like 2-3 years ago now. Time's a flat circle. I believe it's been at least a few years now. Gavin Verhey approached me about something. It was like, I want to start a Pauper panel. This was an idea from Aaron Forsyth, and Gavin Verhey was like, "Yep, let's run with it." And Gavin is like the leader to try and recruit people to be part of this panel. And Gavin wanted a diverse range of voices, diverse range of backgrounds, and also geographically speaking as well. So I am the representative for the UK when it comes to Pauper. And I believe you have 2 people in the US, you have someone in Brazil, you have a couple of people in Japan, and you got one in Italy as well. Italy has a huge Pauper scene as well, so that makes total sense. We're all from like different backgrounds. Some of us are competitive, some of us are more casual leaning, some of us are more community focused. And it was really important to have these different voices just to cover all those bases. And Gavin was like, "Do you want to be part of the Pauper format panel?" I was like, "Yeah, sounds sick. Let's go." And since then we talk a lot about texture of the format. Are we happy with how things are playing? We have the ability to recommend cards to be banned. We can say this card should be banned. We do still have to go to Wizards. There is some communication there. But we talk about bans. We talk about, is this deck too good? We talk about, general, like how people feel about the Pauper format panel. And just generally, we basically have a Discord and we're talking nonstop because we're all on different time zones. So the conversation doesn't end.
Sure.
You find that because a lot of the games are played on Magic Online, it's kind of a little bit easier to gather data?
Yes. We do get access to the data. Daybreak Games are really cool for that.
Nice.
So we have a really good idea of, you know, how things are looking, and if there's any like tabletop Pauper events, you know, we try and get deck lists. Like there's an NRG happening in Louisville soon that will run a Pauper 1K event, and you know, I approached NRG going, can we get that data just so we can getting like good tabletop data for Pauper is really hard to come by, just because there aren't many big events. So it's really important for us to, you know, talk to these TAs and go, hey, can we get this for PFP reasons, and, you know, just see what the differences are between online and tabletop, because there are differences.
I guess availability of cards and reprints is
Usually, so on Magic Online, a lot more people will play red because games finish much quicker, and there are people who will turbo through leagues to sell their tickets for money and use that as income. That is something that happens a lot, especially in the Brazilian community.
Oh, wow.
They actually make more money doing it that way. So you will get a lot of people double queuing, playing red decks because it's quick, cheap, and they're often quite good as well. They're just very explosive. So when you see Pauper deck lists on like MTG Goldfish, a lot of the sideboard will have hate for red cards, and that is why, which you wouldn't often see in tabletop. A lot of people will just play it just to like blitz through leagues and get ticks. It's like grinding basically.
That's very.
And the decks themselves are cheap as well, so it's like a low cost as well for the amount you will make your money back if you're good enough.
I never even realised that was a thing. I mean, it's interesting to know that is. That's my
happens a lot.
Yeah. Wow. That's very cool. Brazil, you say?
Yeah, it's like Brazilian, those, like, you know, sometimes in America, some people do it as well, but it's fairly common to see people do that with Pauper. They're like, yeah, I'm just going to play the most aggressive deck. You know, this is another reason why Monastery Spear saw so much attention in our data, because not only is the card very good, but it plays into the deck that you just want to turbo through as well.
Yeah, that card has seen its time in Modern as well. It tells you the level of power, doesn't it? It really does. So what about moving forward? So is there anything with the panel that you would like to see from it, or that everyone else would like to see it? I mean, obviously, I suppose, excuse the term, the golden goose would be to have it backed by Wizards, have it become part of the the RCQ sort of scene. But what else would you like to see sort of come from it, really?
So yeah, having like Pauper format, like Pauper as part of the cycle would be great. I know it's not going to happen, so I'm not going to wish for it, just because I get that it just doesn't make money. And Wizards are in the business to make money, so you know, we get plenty out of it anyway in terms of like Magic Online and stuff like that. Sure. I think the thing I just want to see is more like just consistency. I think we've done a really good job in the last while, just, you know, keeping our comms good, keeping people up to date on stuff. Even if there isn't a ban, we're just like, hey, here's the texture of the format. We're keeping an eye on this. We're aware of this brood scale combo that could be a problem. You know, we are constantly watching, sort of thing.
Yep.
And I think our comms is probably one of the best parts of the panel, and seem to be generally well received, because, you know, you don't get it with other formats, because this is independent from Wizards, kind of, you know, Gavin exception. So yeah, just us keeping up with it would be good. Something I want to see that I'm hoping I could find time to do is have our own social media channels.
Okay.
Literally have a PFP Twitter page would be good, and just like have like a hub for that. That would be nice. Because we're all fractured at the minute. We all do PFP comms for our own social media channels, and there's like 7 of us, and that fractures things a little. So maybe there is room in the future to unify that and just put it under the PFP, like a social media page. But time is something I just don't have right now. So
yeah, we're probably all in that boat a little bit as well. Yeah. I think that would probably help. I mean, I could definitely see that helping, because then it's you go to one source for that information instead of trying to.
But also, a lot of people just go to Gavin for that source because he has the biggest reach. So it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, I suppose. But, you know, I'm sure he's a very busy man, and that's another, you know, he's already got that string to the bow. Is he going to want to put that amount of time into it when, you know, let's be honest, someone else would probably benefit from it, or could give it the time and consistency it needs, really, couldn't it?
I think his job role could always change as well, and then he might be going off doing something else.
Yeah, I think whatever happens, Gavin will be part of Pauper. He loves the format a lot. Like he is obsessed with the format. Like he's not doing this because he was told to do it. He's doing it because he wants to do it.
Yeah, which is great when you've got that advocate for it on the inside. Just be careful what you wish for, or you might get a Pauper Masters, eh?
I would love for that to happen. I am pretty sure it never will because I can't see Wizards just printing packs of commons.
No, unfortunately.
They're the most susceptible to price changes in the sense that if you reprint one of them, they just plummet and they don't really recover.
They've got these little packs that are only commons and uncommons that sell in like supermarkets, haven't they?
Yeah, I believe they're like the Walmart repacks or whatever.
Yeah.
But nah.
There's something about those that I always look at it, and to my head, whether it happens or not, I'm sure it does. What that makes me think is people have brought packs, skimmed off the thing with any value, and just literally whacked them straight back in and resold them.
Wizards would be better creating Pauper Challenger decks, but even then, like they're not making money off that. They're putting more costs into it than they would get in a return.
I guess something like a dual deck where you get 2 decks for the price.
Yeah, like look at the Standard and Pioneer Challenger decks. They stopped doing them now because they didn't sell, and that was Standard and Pioneer. So there is no chance a Pauper one would sell.
It's interesting because the timing of those releases, it's always like a few months before rotation, whereas now maybe if they kind of sharpened up their timeline, haven't they? I think with the last set of Challenger decks, they released a lot sooner. But it's interesting that those products.
As much as I would love that, it's just like, we get asked that a lot. So it's like Pauper Horizons, and it's like it's never going to happen. I would be more than happy to be proven wrong because it means we're all getting what we want. But just like logistically, it just doesn't make much sense.
Yeah, I think the downshifts in the master sets are cool.
That is our Pauper Masters, basically.
Yeah.
And they tend to offer the biggest impact in Pauper when they happen. Like look at Commander Masters, as I said earlier. When you've got something like downshifts that can just change the texture of Pauper, that is a really unique aspect of the format that you don't really see in other formats. Modern Horizons Modern's like an exception to that because Modern Horizons free reprint stuff that makes it become legal. That you see.
Yes, you're printing cards that are new to Modern, effectively. Yeah.
You're reprinting cards that are new to Modern, but were like Legacy, older, legal. Like Kappa Cannoneer was like a Commander card. Now you can play it in Modern. I think that's a really interesting aspect of Pauper that people don't really talk about often. I think I would like to see more downshifts in Pauper. Even, we've just had all that glitters and Monasteries of Spear.
All right, so straight off the bat then, one card you'd like to see a downshift straight off.
Gifted Aetherborn.
Ooh, okay.
So Gifted Aetherborn is a card from Kaladesh, I believe. It's an uncommon. For 2 black, you get a 2/3 with Death Touch and Lifelink.
That's right.
Doesn't sound fancy at all. However, I kind of want to see Mono Black Control come back. And Grey Merchant of Asphodel was like a really popular win condition in old Mono Black Control decks. I just want to see that kind of come back because that was the Jund of Pauper for the longest time. And also, it just shows up well against red decks. It does a really good job against aggression, which we see a lot of. So just having this 2/2 or 2/3, I can't remember the stat line off the top of my head, just with Lifelink and Death Touch seems good. And in Pauper right now, you're seeing a lot of big creatures. Like you've got Riven Chrysalis and Boarding Parties and... in the Gruul mid-range decks, just having these Death Touch creatures just shores that up a little better.
So I'm I'm sat here on mtggoldfish.com looking at the meta Pauper game right here, right now. And the one thing I really like compared to... So when I normally look at sort of like... particularly other formats, Standard and Modern, and the main ones, I tend to look at this. The one thing that is I always find nice about Pauper is looking at the meta percentages. So instead of getting your mid-20s, 30s, and sometimes even higher, I'm currently looking here, you've got 18, 14, 13, 11, 10, 4. Well, it's basically 5, 4, 3.5, 2.5, 3.5. That's 10 decks. And you're still, there's a real range. And then you can start to go down into what looks like the smaller ones. Like right for now, I'm just reading something. It's got Walls combos, Boggles, Core Gates, Jeskai Ephemerate, Jund Reanimate, and stuff like that. So there's a real mix in Pauper at the minute. But
there's a lot of cool variety. There's a lot of decks that are very nostalgic of old Legacy and Modern decks as well.
Okay.
So Core Gates is very similar to Core Blade, which was a very old deck, a very powerful old deck that used Squadron Hawks and Brainstorm. Core Gates is very similar. It uses Squadron Hawks and Brainstorms, but it also uses the gates from Battles for Baldur's Gate as the win condition. So you use Basilisk Gate. So I'm going to swing in with like my 7/7 Squadron Hawk, kill you. But it plays out as like this blue-white control deck in essence, and then you just kill people. And you kill people with Squadron Hawks and Sacred Cats, which is a 1/1 with a lifelink, but you can make it massive because of all these gates.
I do like blue-white.
And you have, it's like a control-y, mid-rangey style deck, but it is kind of difficult to play because you have to figure out your draws because you want to put your Squadron Hawks back so you can shuffle your deck again. You use Squadron Hawk as a shuffling mechanism.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's really cool, and it's cool just to see that innovation happen in Pauper fairly regularly as well.
I think that's the thing I really like about it. So, like I said, I keep my eye on Pauper. I wish there was a bit more of a Pauper scene at Langdon. I know one of the guys, or maybe last year or something like that, he done exactly what you said earlier. He brought our Facebook market. I think he brought a bundle of 8 or 10 Pauper decks, and he would just bring them up and be like, "Yeah, if anyone wants to borrow a deck, you can borrow a deck." And he had the variety to play what he wanted. And I think because there was then more decks available, more people came to it. And it seemed like, I'm not going to say it was the most popular format there, but it seemed like it was the one that was trending the most. You know what the LGSs are like. All of a sudden, it seems like everything is it's all or nothing, isn't it? It's all standard, or it's all modern, or pioneer, or whatever, and then it just dies a death. Whereas it just seemed like that was going on at the minute. So that's kind of what sort of put it on my radar a little bit. And I sort of played... it's just gone from my head. Doesn't really matter.
What cards are in there?
It's Is It. And you had the one that flips when you... Don't worry about it. I'll find it.
Are you talking about the insectile?
Yes.
Delver Secrets.
Delver Secrets. Yeah. Is It Delver deck, which
you played Is It Fairies probably then?
Yeah, absolutely love that. Absolutely fell in love with it.
Red's a fun card in that format.
And it's one of those decks I've got that actually it's just got to a point. I was only thinking the other day. I was going through some of my cards. It's like, I might have a little look to see if anything needs a bit of an update, but I haven't played it in a while, and I'm itching to play it a little bit. So I need to try and bend some arms and get some people out there to go play in it. But
what I do, and I'm like, here's some decks. It's like, at worst, we can have a match. You don't like it, and you can play something else. And at best, you're like, this is sick. I want to keep playing this. And it's like, cool, we can keep doing that.
I think, and that's the beautiful thing about it. It really is. But I love how the format seems to flow. And what I mean by that is that I can look at this list 1 month and it will look like how it does now. You know, you've got Broadscale Combo, Grixis Affinity, Gruul Ramp, Mono Red Singes, and the Mono Blue Delver. They're like the top 5, quote unquote. Last time I looked, that wasn't how this looked. And I really like the idea of it. It sounds like the format just flows a bit more than, the top 3 decks of Modern are still the top 3 decks of Modern. Do you know what I mean? And everyone else is just chicken and picking around it. And let's be honest, the other decks are still there because there are always people that would be like, I don't care if my Tron deck isn't meta, I'm still going to go.
I'm running Infect no matter what.
Exactly.
Yeah, literally. It happened last weekend. So we saw somebody who was on Elves, and they top-8'd with Elves. And the one thing in Pauper at the minute, there's a lot of like Pyroclasm style effects, like Breath Weapon, that just wipes the board. But this guy was like, nope, I just love playing Elves, and I play Elves all the time, whatever Pauper event, and he top-8'd. And, this was like using like original printings and stuff. So it's just like, yeah, you've been an Elves player for a while if you have all the OG stuff. And that's the great thing. It's just like, I can just build Elves and just play it for years and just make some like marginal upgrades and don't care what the meta's like. I'm just going to play Elves because Elves are great. It's like me with Tron in Modern. I will just play Tron because I love that deck. I just love what it does. I don't care if it sucks. I get to play my Urza's lands and have a good time.
I think you
Have
always...
you foiled out a Pauper deck?
Oh, yeah.
Huh?
How easy is it to foil out?
It's fairly easy, but not cheap. Something that Gavin Verhey started doing, or at least trying to do, is add secret layer cards that are also Pauper playables. So I don't know if you saw the Mirrodin artifact lands, like Sea of the Sign or Great Furnace. They came in a secret layer job. And when we went to Paupergeddon in June, we saw a lot of Grixis Affinity players with those secret layer artifact Mirrodin lands. And Gavin was like, this is great. I feel vindicated because people are actually picking up and buying them because, you know, blinging out Pauper decks is kind of hard to do because they're just commons. They don't get these showcase treatments. So having secret layer printings just is another way just to kind of express that I love elves. Here are all the cool elves I can play from secret layer drops that are also common. And it's just cool to see. Like recently, there was the D&D secret layer. There's a copy of Snuff Out with, you know, the Beholder, which is, I'm expecting to see that at Paupergeddon next year in, you know, various Dimir control decks. And it's like, cool, you know, it's a good form of expression. This is why, you know, showcase cards and foils are nice.
I think when you know, we traditionally think about the blinging out of, obviously with foils and whatnot, but I suppose I always like when people like to go for the oldest copies. Now, obviously, that can be one of those things you look at and you're like, oh, that's it's a very expensive card, and you know, even some of them, they would have a foil treatment that would be mega money. But I like that instead of just bog standard or the latest set has these in, so I'm going to put a 4 of, and it shows that someone has obviously had a keen interest in that format or that architect for a long time, and they've kept those cards, and they've always gone, do you know what? I always keep hold of them, and you know, it's always
like I have a set of Antiquities Tron lands, and if you aren't familiar, Antiquities, there was a set of them, a set of 12, 4 of each lands, each with different art, and the Urza's Tower is one of each season. So they did the seasonal stuff before Bloomburrow, ignore Bloomburrow, and they're just, as a set independently, they're just so nice, and they're battered to hell because I've played them for like 8 years at this point, but I will never get rid of them just because, you know, they're a cool collection. It's Antiquities. It's just not a set that exists anymore, like accessibility wise.
It's interesting because I'm actually in the middle of I'm at the beginning of trying to I'd like to collect Antiquities, and I have started on those Urza lands, actually, weirdly. So
really nice.
Pete from Langdon actually come to me because he knows I'm trying to do it, and he sort of said, I think I've got something you might like, and he brings in this sort of stack of them. I'm like, yes, please, and thank you. I just end up taking a load of them, but there's just something about it. Okay.
Yeah, when I tend to buy Pauper cards for decks, I always try and go for like the oldest printing. That is Black Border. Yeah. So I have Hydroblast and Pyroblast that are like original printings, you know, retro but Black Border, which are really nice, you know. I picked up some Wild Growths that were, you know, original printing. That isn't like beta, a bit too expensive, but like the cheaper versions. And I just love the old border, like the original border. Yeah. There's just something nice about it. It's just something classic about it.
It's like seeing all these new cards being printed in old border for people to be able to like fully old border their decks, especially in modern and stuff.
Funniest thing is the future side border is probably more retro than the actual retro frame, based on like the Hyper Mystery Booster 2, which I just find really funny, considering the future side border was just like a snapshot of what Magic looks in the future, but it in fact looks really retro in comparison to everything else, just because it's not used as much anymore.
That's cool. Borders. I mean, I'm a collector as well, so I'm always a lover of the nice borders. There's some good borders around in a minute. I'm a big fan of particularly the full art and the extra. I'm going to say like the retro, but you know they are leading towards the older border styles. Is always a good one. I'm a big fan of.
Any classic stuff.
Oh, 100%. So look. You know, as much as we can all tell, you're a massive fan of Pauper and love it to bits. You play Commander as well, right?
Yeah, on occasion. I don't play as much as I probably should, I'm going to be honest. I do have a couple of decks, just in case. But I've honestly been getting into Canadian Highlander.
Ooh, yeah, yeah.
Because my store has Harlequins, so it has a good commander scene, but it also has a really good CEDH scene. But I'm like, on CEDH, and it's like a couple of my friends are like, you should play CEDH, and it's like, if you want me to play that style of format with powerful cards and 100 cards, that sort of stuff, I will play Canadian Highlander. And everyone's like, ooh, Canadian Highlander's fun. We haven't done that in a while. And now everyone's into Canadian Highlander. So we started playing that. But I play Commander on occasion. I have like 2 to 3 decks. I guess my pride and joy is Anzarag the Quake Mole, which is the Gruul Mole God from Carlophana. I have a Preston the Vanisher deck, which is mono white turbo initiative combo. That's a bit more powered. And then I have the Necron Dynasties Precon from Warhammer that is just unchanged because the deck is messed up good. Oh, and I also have a Bonnie Powell Clear Cutter Simic lands deck that is unsleeved, and I play it unsleeved.
Is this the one that creates the cow token?
Yeah, it makes the cow token, which is double sleeved and in a top loader, because that's the only thing that matters in that deck. That's the only thing that needs protecting.
The token costs more than any other card in that deck.
But yeah, that deck's real fun. It's like, I think it cost me like £25, but just because the floor on Simic is so high with all like the ramp and passive card draw, it's actually really fun to play. But I play it unsleeved, and it makes people uncomfortable for some reason. But
yeah, I'm not quite as sold on the unsleeved as some of the other people in the community.
So the way I see it is, we spend a lot of time playing Magic, but not actually touch the cards that we own.
Okay.
And it's like, there's just something really satisfying about shuffling up just a pack of cards, just a deck of cards that aren't sleeved. Like, I'm fine with having beaten up cards that I've paid £25 for and just got from like my random just assortment of cards. Like, I'm happy for their condition to deteriorate.
Sure.
But there's just something nice about it. I'm a biggest like aesthetics, like feeling kind of person. Like, just getting that feel is also kind of nice.
Yeah. I think it's one of those things, particularly in the UK creators area, multiples have tried to convert me. I'm not quite sure if I'm quite convinced. That I think my biggest issue is that I like playing quite powerful decks, and power, particularly in Commander, normally leads to expense, and then then you start getting to the point where you're like, well, do I really want my shock lands, or I'm not even talking about
Don't run them.
Yeah,
Don't run them.
The
best land in Commander is a basic land.
Yeah,
just saying.
That's a very fair point.
But the funniest thing I found whenever I played Bonnie Powell is that people don't see me as the threat because they think my deck is just a pile of rubbish because I haven't sleeved it. Like people just like think, oh, she's not the threat.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, just because people assume sleeving up and stuff equates value, which also means it's not good. So why would I attack this person? And I'm like, you're so wrong here. I'm going to win with Endra's Forerunners and Avengers of Zendikar. Let's go. But no, it's just funny, like, seeing people go, oh, she doesn't have a lot going on. Her deck looks a bit beaten up. Like, I'm not going to interact with that. And it's like, great. Fine with me.
Stomped on by a 12/12 cow or something.
Yeah, like, and, Bonnie Powell's a bit of a machine. You just, like, regurgitate lands, and, your cow gets bigger. And if someone removes my cow, I have to finish them because it's a vengeance story because you don't touch my cow. Yeah, it's just fun to play. It just feels like Magic when I first started playing, which was without sleeves. It just evokes that sort of origin story for me. It's just like back to the start.
Even in tournaments at the start, there was no sleeves, right?
No sleeves, no playmats.
Yeah. You
had a napkin for your life totals, and you were happy. See, an elastic band to hold it all together.
That's a side of Magic I didn't experience, and I'm not too sure if I wanted to. Oh, well, actually, I say that we would have done that with Pokemon, but not obviously. That would have been the kind of same sort of thing.
And it was worse back then because you had like dual lands, which are now worth hundreds of pounds, and power that were worth thousands.
Yep.
It's really funny to see where Magic has come in. Just amusing.
I tell you what, if I could get back all of the money I've spent on sleeves, I would be really happy.
Yeah, feel that. I've got to re-sleeve my cube soon, and it's just like that's like 600 cards, so that's going to be fun.
That brings us on really nicely because I was about to ask you about your cube. So, for people that don't know, tell us about your cube and where you like to bring it out to.
So I have something called a peasant cube. So if you don't know what the term peasant means, it means commons and uncommons only. So no rares, no mythic rares. If it's downshifted to a common uncommon, it can go in. Basically, this was my pandemic project when I was really bored and wasn't working. I was like, cool, I can do the things I've been meaning to do for ages. So I started a cube. So that was just like my pandemic project. It's 450 cards. Legacy powered, as in there's some legacy powered cards in there. So for example, Force of Will is an uncommon. Sylvan Library is also an uncommon. So they're in there. And it's very old school Magic, as in lots of creatures, lots of back and forth, lots of permanents in general. And you just get to play these cool iconic spells. And my favorite thing is when anyone ever drafts my cube and goes like, how the is this an uncommon? When was this an uncommon? Recent example, Commander Masters, we talked about how much they downshifted stuff. They downshifted a lot of cool cards for uncommon. Like Gonti, Lord of Luxury, is now an uncommon, which is also in my cube. And everyone's just like, wow, they made this an uncommon? It's like, yeah, and that's a really cool way to power up the cube. It's probably my pride and joy, along with Anzrag, in terms of that. If for whatever reason I fall out of Magic, I would keep that cube because it's cubes are basically like time capsules for Magic. You can curate it in a way that you enjoy most, and I really enjoy Peasant Cube. So I'm gonna keep that for the rest of my life and just break it out with friends. Like, shall we just jam some old school Peasant Cube? And it's like, yeah, let's go, because you're basically building a board game that's Magic.
Yeah,
and I think that's cool.
I think the thing I love about the thing I love about the idea of cube is the versatility of it. You could just do so much of it. You could have, I don't know, wizard theme cube. I don't know. I've just put
there's a lot of cool cubes. There's a lot of cool, like, people break design when it comes to cube and mechanics. So, for example, I played a cool cube last year called the Cascade Cube, where you start with a I forgot the name of the card. Basically, it's from Alara, where the first spell you cast has Cascade, and you start that as an emblem. Okay. So the first spell every game of your turn has Cascade. Oh, wow. So you build the deck in a way that can do all these Cascade enablers. So like Venerated Loxodon is really good because it's like 5-6 mana, but you can convoke it out, but cascade into something lower than that. Yeah. And it's just like this very snowbally, really interesting way of doing it. I've seen, kindred cubes that care about creature types. There's a really cool cube called the Creatureless Cube, which doesn't run any creatures. Ooh. It's all spells and token generation and stuff like that. And it's just really fun to see people try different things. Yeah. And people might not know this because everyone just really knows about the Vintage Cube because it's always on Magic Online, which is not a slight. It's great. I just wish they would change it around once in a while because, man, Legacy Cube's also great.
There's whole events, right, that run Cube.
Yeah, so you have CubeCon, which is an annual event in Madison, Wisconsin. I believe the one this year is shortly after Vegas or MagicCon Vegas, like either after or before it. I went to one last year. My cube was featured as one of the for the event.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Basically, it was so you played multiple cubes and you got to day 2. And if you day 2'd, you played a couple more cubes, and the top 8 was Vintage Cube with like no proxies, like you're playing with actual power. And it was just a cool way to celebrate the event, and people just got to try different things. Another thing that was really exciting about it is I got actual data from like random people that played it. I got to see their 3-0 decks. I've got to see the 0-3s. It was really nice just to get access to proper data, which is just something you don't really get when playing Cube, when you play Cube.
Nice. That must be. I suppose there must have been a sense of achievement from yourself that you're sitting there and watching these people playing your cube and enjoying it. Like, that must have been awesome.
It was awesome, but also nerve-wracking because you had people like Reed Duke there playing my cube, and I'm like, good lord, is he just going to break it? Like, am I making this fun? Like, it was just like, there's a little bit of anxiety in the back of my head. It's like, cool, these are some really like ridiculously good players, like Pro Tour regulars and stuff like that. I'm like, ugh. You know, hopefully they enjoy it, but they did. So, but yeah, it never in a million years would I imagine that happened, but it was really cool.
That's cool. That's really cool. Have you got any more plans, anything like that coming up?
So my schedule was pretty quiet for the rest of the year. I spent the first half of this year traveling quite a lot. So I'm taking it easy until next year when, you know, events start kicking up again. The only thing I do have planned, which is next year, is the Magic Spotlight Series in Holland, which is in March. I'll be going to that. But until then, I'm enjoying staying at home and not being on an aeroplane, because there was a point I was traveling a lot, and after a while it gets a bit tiring, especially when you're traveling like to and from America, for example.
I think it's one of those things. I've never worked a job where you do, but you always see like the classic sort of traveler in films. It's constantly back and forth, like normally from America, something like that. And it always sounds really glamorous, but I always sit there and think to myself, you live out of a suitcase in hotel rooms. It must actually kind of suck a little bit. Yeah, it literally happened in June when, so Pauper was in mid-June, so I went off to Pisa to Pauper, and the weekend after that it was Amsterdam for the MagicCon, and it just felt like, I'm just living in a bag. I'm really looking forward to not traveling. As much as it's cool to go to these events, and I always leave with my heart feeling full, I am very tired. I just need to sleep and be left alone for a while. So I'm looking forward to just taking the rest of the year out and just working from home as I do. And then, you know, it all starting again next year, because we should get the MagicCon schedule fairly soon as well, so I can start properly planning stuff. Do you reckon it'll be pre or post Vegas then? It should be, if I'm guessing, so I don't know anything. No. For the record, my guess would be they'll announce it at Vegas, because they normally do, don't they? They normally announce the next event at that event, so people can buy tickets. And there's no way to buy tickets for the MagicCon schedule next year. So it'll be like, here's the schedule, here's the first one in February or whatever, buy tickets, because that makes sense. You're driving the hype. I think didn't last year they kind of soft announced two, like exactly like you just sort of said. They could be like, oh, well, this would be the next one, keep out for tickets, and then the following one will be, and it just gives like a bit vague, you know. Whatever. So they usually announce the locations, but not the actual dates. So they'll probably announce the locations next year, and there'll be the date for the first one, because they have to sell tickets for it, because it's really hard to sell tickets for an event if there's no dates for it. Yeah, exactly. My guess, the first one will be in the States, and I'm gonna guess it's Chicago. Just based on how well it did. Well, Chicago was like the most attended MagicCon, and also it was Chicago in winter, which is really cheap in terms of like venue rental, because no one wants to go to Chicago in like -10 winter weather with snow. Yeah,
fine if you're indoors playing Magic, but not much.
Yeah, it's called the Windy City for a reason. Like that wind cuts through you. So that would be my guess. I wouldn't be surprised if Chicago is the first one. I'm just curious to see if there's a European one. Yeah, it feels like there will be another one. They don't think they will do because of the size of these things, but I'd quite like them to do a few more. I say that, and then I'd probably attend more, and then I'd go, well, maybe a few less, because even this year... Well, you've got the Spotlight Series now as well, which are going to be... They're not Grand Prix, but they kind of are, basically. They're just been rebranded. I call them Magic Fest, because they're probably closer to that than they are Grand Prix. When Magic Fest were a thing for a minute. But we've got 2 of those next year, so you're probably going to have like 3 European events held, like supported by Wizards, which is pretty good considering, you know, how, you know, like the pandemic really slowed things down. And, you know, I would happily take that over the one MagicCon we might get every year. Yeah. Definitely. I think that's definitely a really, really good point there. I know when we were talking about this, Dom, have you ever played much Pauper?
I don't think I've ever played.
Oh.
You know?
Can I interest you in Pauper EDH?
Pauper EDH. So is this where you have an uncommon for your commander?
Yeah, so it's common. Your deck is commons, but your commander is uncommon, but it doesn't have to be a legendary. It just has to be a creature.
That probably makes some really interesting and.
I used to have a Soul Herder Pauper EDH deck, and it was blue-white blink. But you can play legendaries if you want. Like Tatiova is like a Simic legend that you could easily play in Pauper EDH, which would probably be quite good. I considered building Mayhem Devil as a Pauper EDH commander.
Wow.
Mayhem Devil's a really messed up card. That's a really messed up card, and all the really good sack effects are common. And you know, Pauper EDH has a really the community is small, but they're very tight knit. They're very passionate people, and that's another way to enjoy, you know, playing, you know, Commander on the cheap or with the restriction is let's try Pauper EDH, and you'll be surprised how powerful it is because you will have Dark Rituals and Lightning Bolts and Brainstorms and Ponders and everything else.
I've got boxes full of commons that I've kept because they would go in a deck, so maybe I can put some
like if there's an uncommon creature you like the look of, it might be worth doing.
Mayhem Devil. Yeah, it's the one I quite fancy the sound of. I think
the deck's really good.
Yeah. I know. I think we were talking about that last year or beginning of the year. I think I don't know what it was. It's just I don't normally play those colours. I don't normally play that type of style of Magic. But I don't know what it was. I remember looking. I was like, yeah, I think I could do something quite good with this. And
pretty good. I used to play Soul Herder, and that was pretty good because there's a card called Gulf Squid, which is like a 4-mana 2/2 beast. When it ETBs, tap target opponent's lands they control. So you just keep looping that on every upkeep, and it's really a lot of fun. But it was really powerful.
Wow. Yeah.
It's blue-white control.
Yeah, I'm stuck here with 2 control players all of a sudden.
Well, I'm not a control player by heart. It's just a lot of the blink stuff I like doing falls best in control. Take Jeskai Ephemerate in Pauper. It's a Jeskai control deck that uses Cleansing Wildfire, which is, you know, a land destruction spell, but you use it to target your own indestructible lands, and you treat it like an explore. So you draw a card off it, and you get a land out of your deck. It's basically ramp, but the effect still happens even if you can't destroy the land. So you just play this dirtily control deck, and you have stuff like Moldrifter. And then you cast the card Ephemerate, and then with the evoke trigger on the stack, you get to draw more cards, and you get to keep a 2/2, and then on your upkeep with the rebound, you get to do it all over again, and you've drawn like 6 cards for 4 mana, and that's a great rate. And it's just got like Brainstorms, it's got Lightning Bolts, it's got Ponders, counter spells, and I'm not a control player, but I just love blinking Moldrifter way too much to go beyond that.
Ephemerate's
Blinking is fun. I'm quite looking forward to the new Aminatu precon from Dustborn. Actually, looks interesting.
We should find out about those tonight. I believe Wizards. I mean tonight, as in we're recording on a Saturday for at the event. At PAX West, which is like an hour and a half, I believe. They're going to start kicking things off, so I'll read through all the stuff tomorrow morning. And hopefully we'll get all the face commanders, you know, knowing what they actually do, rather than just
they've been partly
images.
shown, haven't they? Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
There's been a few sites where they've partially leaked, but you have to squint.
Yeah. And it's like we knew Anna Martu was going to be on it because she's on the bloody product. Of
she's on the box. Yeah,
she's going to be the commander. She's on the box. Like, you're not helping here. You're not actually helping at all. But
I do love it when you'll get people online that they'll be like, you know, they have like these big brain moments of like, oh my god, and they start going to detail, and you're like, it's on the box, my dude. Like,
it's like, oh, Anna Martu's on the precon. Well, yeah, her face is on it. Like,
it's probably
I understand excitement. I understand people are excited and they just want to know the cards, but you know, it just happens. You know,
I mean,
leaks in general suck anyway.
I like them to be. I like them to be. Actually, I find leaks actually extend the release period of time. So instead of it being like it should do, and I know it's intense and I know it happens real quick, but because they normally happen maybe a week, 2, maybe even 3 beforehand, it feels like it's a longer process. So then once you've been through a release, you know, so it wasn't that long ago, you know, Bloomberg was released, and then we have had a little bit of a gap, but then if you have leaks, that gap shrinks, and that's what I don't really like about it.
Happened with Modern Horizons 3.
Yeah.
It really cut the tail on Outlaws of Thunder Junction by like 3 weeks, which is a long time for a Magic set.
Yeah.
And OTJ was like a great set. People really liked it, and it's like, nah, we're just gonna leak half the Modern Horizons 3 set because we can, and it's like kind of a jerk for that, but it happens. Like, Wizards addressed it. They had a really good article that talked about the leaks and just revealed more cards. It's just a shame interest just shifts immediately, because also like the sales of cards also shifts because people aren't buying Thunder Junction anymore. They're pre-selling Modern Horizons 3 because they've seen these leaks.
They've seen this new, more powerful card, right?
It damages like stores as well, because they're just sitting on OTJ stock that isn't selling because people are buying Modern Horizons 3 instead.
Well, they've cancelled their pre-orders. Worst case, this as well.
This is it. I'm not a fan of them. It's inevitable. Just given the age we live in, information is just so easy to share and distribute. It's just sucks when it happens.
The thing I always find about it is these like quote unquote leaks is it's almost like they've never heard of like a camera phone because they're shaky and the quality of them is horrific.
It's intentional.
Yeah.
It's probably intentional so they don't get tracked back. Would be my guess.
Yeah.
Like otherwise.
Otherwise, people knock at your door, as we know, right? That's...
It is potato-y for a reason. It's by design, not because people can't use a camera or they're using like a Nokia 30, like an old Nokia flip phone or whatever. You know?
Love it.
I kind of like the idea of that. You know, some sort of, you know, like they're not like a product spy or something like that. But the fact they've got an old Nokia in their pocket for
or a camera on their little button on their shirt.
Yeah, I was literally going to say, like, they pull it apart, like...
So, changing the subject completely, Duskmorn is coming up. Do you have a favourite horror film?
I'm not a big horror person, I'm going to be honest. I'm easily spooked by a lot of things. So, in terms of, like, flavour, Duskmorn is, like, switched off for me. But it is an enchantment-focused set, and I do like enchantments as like a card type. So, I'm really looking forward to that. I guess if I had to decide, so I like my horror to be really unserious, like really knows it's not taking itself seriously. So stuff like Evil Dead's fine, I guess. You know, that sort of like cheesy slasher is really taking the piss kind of horror, because you know it's you know I like stuff that breaks 4/4s, that breaks parody and stuff like that. So I'd say that one. In terms of like video games, like Dead Space is probably the horror game that I really enjoyed the most. But you're not going to see Dead Space and Duskmorn because the genres are just too different. But let's go with Evil Dead.
Yeah, nice. Have you seen Tucker and Dale versus Evil? That's
yes, it's also really
that's
good.
another kind of tongue-in-cheek one that I really enjoy.
Yeah, I like my horror to be like that rather than all the serious stuff. Like the first Saw film was also quite good. I'll give you that. I just wish they stopped after the first, but
well, they're up to 10 now, I think, aren't they?
Yeah, it's just like the first Saw film was just so good. And granted, I don't really do horror, but I actually really enjoyed that one. And it's like you could have just left it and it would be great. Why have we got like 10 of them?
There's only so many ways you can tell effectively the same story, isn't it?
Yeah, and it kind of just dilutes the quality as well. It just makes the first one look even worse when you have 9 others that are just average. But yeah, we'll say the first Saw film and Evil Dead.
Good choices, Alex.
I don't really know, to be quite honest. I don't know. I don't tend to watch. I like more of a psychological type horror more so than anything. So, I always say this, and people sort of like shake their head at me a little bit. But actually, one of the ones. So, if you give me that sort of like classic horror, I almost sort of I watch it, and I can, because I listen to the music a lot, and I read what's on the screen quite easily.
Yeah.
I almost like know here comes the jump scare, and even when it's a bit comical and they really cod and lean into it, like I don't mind that so much. But even the serious ones, like you kind of feel about it. Whereas say things like the Blair Witch Project and Paranormal Activity. Now, obviously
found footage stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. but the thing that kind of gets me a little bit is you never see it, and that's the thing. So the problem is like, take the Blair Witch for argument's sake. If you had someone mocked up as the Blair Witch that was shaking the tent and chasing them down, it then would probably be like, nah, I'm over this. Like, but the fact that you never see it always makes me. Do you know what I mean? That makes.
Yeah, you never see a guy in a rubber suit. Running around. Especially in these older movies. Yeah, actually, they don't reveal it. Actually, it makes it more scary.
Yeah, I've always felt like horror today is just too obvious.
Yeah, it's all jump scares, right? There's a lot of it.
It's just like it's better letting your mind manifest what this thing could be rather than just me visualize it, because the way people become scared about stuff is if they don't know stuff. Like 100%. If they can't see it, if they can't feel it, if they can't hear it, if they can't put a picture to something, people are just naturally more scared because they don't know what they're prepared for. And just letting that seed just like bloom in the back of your mind is actually a good way to do horror. Yeah. But it just feels like everything's very obvious and transparent these days because that's just the trend, I guess.
I tell you a great example about this. They do this like it's like a Halloween thing they do by Long Melford, so it's not too far away from where we are. You ever been to Long Melford, Emma?
No.
So it's got like a big manor house, that sort of stuff. You wouldn't really go to. It's not too far from Lavenham. But anyway, they do something called Scaresville, and basically what it is. Well, anyway. So if you know Scaresville, Scaresville basically is set around like a country house. And you go in and out of things in the dark, and basically you have people that are dressed up or will pop out of stuff and to try to go for jump scares. Now, the problem I have with them is because I don't find them scary at all, because I see these people rocking around do you know what I mean? And it's weird because if you're not scared of them, they leave you alone completely. So they always go after the people that are like really hyper nervous, like, oh my god, there's like around the corner, and then someone taps them on the shoulder, they're like, ah, like whatever. But I feel like horrors in general are a little bit like that. They have to have the jump scare for that is the horror and that is the scare. Whereas actually, if they didn't do it, that would keep me on tenterhooks a bit longer. Yeah. So instead of having 10 jump scares, if they would have 1 or 2, but like really well placed, like you don't know when it's going to happen, then it would be that sort of like, oh my god, makes you jump more so than, oh my god, this person's walking down this back alley going after this, there's a sound.
Oh no, it's the Slender Man. Oh no.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? It's one of those things. Like, to me, then my brain kind of goes, well, that's not really scary, but
it's difficult because if you do that too much, then people won't watch your film.
Yeah,
because people will be too scared to watch it, if that makes sense.
I know. I think that's the ultimate issue.
I know that sounds ridiculous because it's a horror movie, but like.
The problem is what you create is you create a very small niche. So it's a bit like when you speak to people that are very passionate about old zombie films. They would be the type that would probably, you would ask them about Walking the Dead and be like, I don't even watch that. No, that's a load of hooey. There's nothing like the original zombie ones and that sort of stuff. So basically, again, it comes down to a little bit like what we were saying about Wizards earlier. They are producing something for the mass, not the tiny small amount. And the tiny small amount won't earn them that money, whereas the mass will. So it's that mass market, appeal, basically, isn't it?
There's going to be so many like horror tropes in Duskmourn. Like, I read Mark Griswatter's Tumblr thing that he does with every set. It's like, here's what's coming in the set, and there's going to be a 1/1 red balloon token. And it's like, cool, you've already got a card called Chainsaw, which is a reference, and there's going to be Saw references and stuff like that. And I hope the people who are into horror like enjoy that. I can take it or leave it. But I got my adorable animal set, so I can't complain.
So you're happy.
Polar opposites. Yeah.
It does feel like Barbenheimer of Magic Places.
You've got sweet fluffy animals. Maybe some of them will be getting dissected in this next set. Who knows?
Well, Nashi is on Duskmourn, and Nashi is a rat. Yeah.
So talking of which, I would love another Kamigawa set personally. I'm massive fan of.
Will almost certainly return, I expect, given the success of the last set.
I think that's sort of like sort of like emo punk style or sort of modern punk style, I think was just absolutely fantastic. Cyberpunk, that's the word I was after. Thank you. Was absolutely fantastic. I was a really big fan of the original Kamigawa anyway. I love the art. The art for me is that sort of Japanesey style. I'm a massive fan of. But I was really unsure how to take Neon Dynasty because I was like, oh, are they going to end up ruining it? But actually, I think they've done it really, really nicely. They still had a lot of the original style of the Japanese art. You know, I felt like they've really done some good work there and brought it forward and made it its own without it being, you know, too much the same or too, you know, they hit the sweet spot for me personally.
Yeah, and it wasn't like the old Kamigawa sets, which historically did not sell very well. So they kind of reinvented the wheel with Kamigawa, which is great. Also happened with Ixalan when we had Lost Caverns of Ixalan in November. You know, when we first went to Ixalan, it wasn't that popular of a set. So it's really cool to see Wizards going, yeah, this set kind of was a dud. Let's reinvent it. Let's see what else we can do. And, you know, they've done it with Kamigawa, which is, I think, is still the best-selling standard set of all time right now. And then you got Lost Caverns of Ixalan, which was just really popular because, you know, you had all these Kindred stuff, you have Roaming Throne, and it was just a really cool environment compared to the last Ixalan. It was just felt bolder than before.
I think, actually going to a different place on a plane that you visited before just makes it more interesting as well. Something that you haven't seen, but obviously you have the returning characters, links it all in, but actually, going to a different place.
So everyone's like, oh, what if Duskmourn doesn't do great? And it's like, Wizards will come back to it in 5 years and reinvent it again.
Yeah.
Like, they literally did it with Kamigawa and Ixalan. Like, next year's going to be really exciting because we're coming back to Tarkir.
Yes.
In first half of it. You're also going back to Lorwyn at the end of next year as well.
I forgot about Lorwyn, yeah.
Yeah, so Standard's going to be really interesting that time because you're going to have Bloomburrow and Lorwyn in Standard. So you're going to have this really, like, Kindred heavy... potentially like standard format, and that sounds sick to me. Yeah.
What is the third? Is it the Death Race one, the other one, or is it the sci-fi?
Yeah, so one of them's a sci-fi one, and the other one, the sci-fi one's the first one of next year, I believe, and then the Death Race one is like the full set.
Yeah, I just want a Mad Max Secret Lair, just with the Interceptor.
Nice. Like the space set's going to be interesting because Wizards haven't really done space proper outside of Infinity. But like in an actual standard set, it's going to be interesting to see because we're going from cutesy animal set to a horror set to, you know, basically a core set into space terraforming Mars like Magic set. So it's going to be interesting to see how they can just tie all this in together.
I hope they do it well because I think if they go too much with it, it may break the feel that Magic the Gathering has, and that could upset a lot of people.
I mean, people like there's some folks that are upset about Duskmourn because it's leaning unapologetically heavy into like the horror stuff, and people are like, oh, this is not Magic. This feels 2 universes beyond, but it's not. And it's like, well, some people just like this stuff, and it will do well because people love those pop culture references.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
it's the way to get people engaged.
I mean, personally, I'm not the biggest fan of the pop culture references because I think they're overdone. Not that I don't enjoy them, I just think they overdo them. Do you know what I mean? It's like when you have like a scene of Game of Thrones and they make a reference about, you know, your favorite coffee from your favorite coffee shop, but without actually saying it, you're just a bit like, it's not the greatest thing for me. But I've seen enough of it that actually, I think it sounds really interesting. To me, it feels a bit more like sort of Ghostbustery vibes, like with excess horror.
There is Ghostbuster references. There was an art that literally was very similar to what they use in Ghostbusters. They're leading into it. But the thing is, I feel like you either do it, so you either don't do that, or you just go head first and just do everything. Like you need to be unabashed about it.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You really need to be unabashed about it, and I think I'm like. Part of me is just like, sure, horror's not my thing, but how many Easter eggs can I find in the set? In reference to different horror sets and stuff.
It's a good way of looking at it, to be honest.
Yeah, it's just like happened with Bloomburrow, with like Redwall and stuff like that. It's just like, cool. What are these little nods that I can find, you know, that are referencing, you know, old literature or pop culture references?
Yeah, nice. Yeah, it's interesting where Magic has started and where it's come to. And where it's leading to. I think
I'm also happy they're doing a horror set that isn't Innistrad.
Yeah.
I'm so bored of Innistrad. I'm so sorry, Innistrad fans. Like, there's only so many times you can do that kind of trope before it just gets really boring, in my opinion.
It's just vampires and werewolves at the end of the day, isn't it?
Yeah.
And ghosts, but and zombies.
And
but that's very much a kindred kind of plane, whereas actually this one looks like it's going to be, there'll be a bit more variety in the creature types and stuff. So
a lot of enchantments because it's all about curses and
runes and things.
Runes and slightly going insane. So there's a really interesting space. The enchantments are like an interesting design, like card type anyway. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with it. Like we know the ley lines are coming back because we saw one of the ley lines already.
Glorious.
And ley lines tend to be pretty fun as well when it comes to constructed play. So
I think it's going to be interesting, very, very interesting. It could end up, particularly if they sort of start really pushing some good, powerful cards, it may even mix sort of Commander up a little bit. And what I mean by that is that I'm an advocate that people don't play enough enchantment and artifact removal. So when you don't play enough of that type of removal, it makes those cards more powerful. So there could be a shift. We'll see. It'll be interesting to see how it all falls, really. Anyway, I'm just looking at the time. We have been dribbling on for far too long. But it's a testament to what a good guest we've had, Emma. Look, thank you so much for joining us and for taking some time out of your evening to come sit down and talk about the game that we all love, which has been it's been a real joy. Thank you for coming on with us.
Thank you.
Thank you for talking to us about what you do and whatnot. Dom, anything else you want to add before we sign off?
No, I don't think so. It's been lovely to have you, and I'll see you again soon, no doubt.
At some UK event, I'm sure.
And I'll have to build a Pauper deck. I need to build a Pauper deck, don't I?
Well, I could just bring some.
Oh, there you go.
I will just bring my case of Pauper decks and we could all jam.
There you go.
I think sort of over. I think we could probably definitely get a number of people together and do some.
I am planning to come down to Ipswich at some point, so I would like to organise something. But I need to figure out what my schedule is. But
yeah, definitely. I mean, if you kind of let us know or something like that in advance, maybe we can try and whip up a bit of a Pauper night or something like that. That'd be really cool.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
I'm sure
it has night or something.
100%. Like something like that would be fantastic. Definitely keeps in the groove for that. Anyway, Emma, where can everyone find you on the socials and that sort of stuff?
So the best place to find me right now is on Twitter, still somehow. That is at Emma D Partlow. There is a link tree on my profile page that has all my articles, commentary stuff, my cube list if you're interested. There's also a Moxfield link that has all my Pauper decks and Commander decks. So that's probably the best place to find me.
Sure.
I'm still fairly active on Twitter, although that might change soon, just given the nature of that website right now. But no, I post on there. I have pack one, pick ones for Cube. I often talk about Pauper. And I often talk a lot about upcoming Magic sets, just info dump and help people out that way too.
Fantastic. Yeah.
I always find your set symbol thing really useful.
At Command Fest Birmingham earlier in the year, someone came up to me and goes, "You're the OTJ set symbol lady, aren't you?" And I'm like, I have a name, but it looks like that's what I'm known for now, apparently.
The person that knows the set symbols inside out.
Someone who reads the Wizard article knows about set symbols. You too can learn this trait. It's called reading the article.
Sounds like a lot of effort.
I'm not doing anything different. I'm just literally putting it on Twitter.
Yeah. I think the difference is you bring it together really nicely, whereas obviously what Dom has basically said, it involves reading and actually putting some effort into actually finding information. And we live in that day and age now, don't we, unfortunately?
People just don't read much anymore.
No,
everything needs to be bite-sized. That's something.
Yeah, 100%. It's that short scale format, short scale brainer.
It's Reddit brain, as I call it.
Yeah, that's probably a good way of putting it. To be honest, it really is. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for joining us. Emma, once again, thank you for coming on. We've thoroughly enjoyed it. We've got another podcast up and coming pretty soon, so there'll be plenty of things for you to catch up with, and Dom, as always, I'll catch you next time. And Emma, again, thank you for having us, and we'll see you in a bit soon. Awesome. Right, cheers, guys. Take it easy.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.